Hey everybody, what up? Scuffy here, and today I'm going to wrap it up with all the various recruit level videos as of date, and finish up with the Alpha Legion, the secret orders, and traps. I'm going to do a 2-for-1 combo. Let's get into it. So before I get into it, a little disclaimer here. This is kind of, I don't know, this is against my better judgment for a couple reasons here. And if you've followed some of the videos I've done, or when I'm talking about the Alpha Legion, specifically secret orders and some of the changes that they've made to them, you kind of watch the progression from when they debuted to how they were executed, and then my enthusiasm gradually went down further and further. Number one, I think that they're not fabulous anymore. They were hard to make fabulous to begin with. It was an enjoyable art form. Number two, I think that they'll be changed at some point down the road, so the relevance of this video is only short term. It may not be effective to somebody maybe 4 or 5 months from now if there's been changes to the way they work. And number three, secret orders and traps, while an integral component of the Alpha Legion, I don't know if I consider them a mechanic exactly. We'll call them that. We'll call them Alpha Legion mechanics, but realistically, they're not. Secret orders are tactics that are played on an opponent's troop and has a various outcome depending on what that troop does. Traps are a tactic that is played into your opponent's deck, and when it is drawn, it creates a certain effect. Both, again, are very spotty in performance. Traps much more so because they rely on the randomness. Oh, wrong button. They rely on the randomness of actually being drawn before they can actually see benefit. And Secret Orders really relies on what your opponent's doing. So I figured I'll pick a warlord who can do both. He can create a trap and he can create secret orders, and you'll be able to see them. And we've already got 2 in the game. And ideally, hopefully, through the course of playing this game, you'll actually be able to see some traps executed. I'm going to have to draw them before I put them in there. And I'm actually gonna build up, because this is a Horus bot, and I want to buy myself some time. So we're going to need those secret orders. Now here's the thing. Here's the important thing with secret orders. We can do this one right away. He has a secret order on him. And if you're the opponent, you can take a look. It'll just say secret order. You don't know what that means. I know what that means. And when he attacks me with that troop, it's going to attack him. Initially, the order stayed, and they just did their damage, and they didn't take damage from the warlord. That's no longer the case. And then on top of that, the secret order goes away, which is really oh gosh, what do I say? How do I say it? Really annoying. Really, really wasteful. It's really wasteful. I'll put another one on here. If he's not going to attack with that front line, then that'll go and at least stun him. Now you could say that, like that right there is a lockdown on a troop, and yes it is. Not anymore. Now that troop goes away. And if it had higher health, it'd be around there for a little bit longer, maybe as an opponent, an actual person opponent, not an AI. You could create, some relative. I'm just going to go ahead and insert a troop or tactic in here now in the deck. You could create some pressure on your opponent to do a certain thing, but the randomness of creating the orders and predicting what your opponent will or won't do was really part of the trouble with it. Actually, I know I've got another gamma order in there. That'll buy me some time. It's all about buying time, really, when it comes down to it with orders. And that's how it was to begin with in the initial deck. Okay, so there's a trap. He drew it. Great. This makes this very easy. You were able to see what a trap does. That trap particular destroyed a troop. And he plays another one right after it. But you've seen a secret order. You've seen a gamma order specifically. And you've seen the, I forget, the heads of the Hydra. I think that one was that trap specific. Let's go ahead and throw out another trap just because. Create another secret order just because. But they were very. He can have one of each now, but he cannot have multiples. Before, you were able to technically put 2 gamma orders on, so when he attacked, he would attack its own warlord twice. You can't do that anymore. But not only can you not do that anymore, they don't stay. And you've only got 2 in a deck. And yes, with Honorius Rhino or with Peck, you can create more. Now that order that just did, he did the 5 damage, and now it's gone. It's gone. So it was a one-time use. And now that secret order, that alpha, it's gone. Which is great because now I've got him and I can actually, do something with him if I so chose. But who's to say I'm going to? Who's to say I'm going to do that? Let's just go ahead and do this. And throw that out. And we'll just get rid of that. And then for funds, just throw in secret orders. All they do now at this point, secret orders and traps, are there some form of disruption. There was, like I said, there was an art form once upon a time when they first were debuted, and it was hard to get that lock. It was hard to get the 2 to 3 secret order combo to work effectively, and that's just secret orders. You've seen what traps do. You've seen one trap. I put 2 traps in the deck. We'll see if I can get the chance to switch to Alpha Legionary and then just pump some more traps into the game down the road. But it was a tactic that relied specifically on banking on that combo to work, otherwise it couldn't. And when they've changed the changes that they've done to it, I think have really just ruled it ineffective and not as useful. Hard enough to execute, and let alone actually benefit from. So, if that troop there still had the Delta Order on it, he wouldn't have been able to deploy 2 additional troops. They would have done 3 damage. I guess they'd have 1 health left as opposed to 2 and 4. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and throw this out there. Switch to Legionary, and let's go into trap making mode, shall we? Let's go into trap making mode. First, I'll throw that over there, and we will go leave that, and then we will make a trap, and we'll start pumping in traps into the opponent's deck just to kind of show you the difficulties of making traps work. If anything, this video should be kind of a cautionary tale. Do or do not do secret orders or traps at your own risk, basically. The opponent's got 16 cards in his deck. One of those is a trap. You've seen 1 trap. I've drawn 2. How many traps can I get into his deck, and how many will he draw? I've had games where I've had 15 plus traps in his deck, and through the course of the entire game, no traps were drawn. And it's hard to play / enjoy a game like that. It really is. Let's go ahead and get another trap in there. Now, Seeds of Betrayal is nice because it does let you draw cards. It's great. But you've got to create it, or you've got to have it in your deck to get that going. And normally, you don't want to give your opponent cards. The Alpha Legion kind of plays around with that a little bit to some degree. But it's not something that you should be really, it's hard to build a strategy around something randomly working and you randomly getting the card and your opponent randomly drawing it. It's a nice little thing when it happens in the game, but for it to take up 8 card slots in the Alpha Legion's thing, you would think that, oh, they've got to be irrelevant somehow because of that. I mean, that's 8 card slots of tactics that must be useful to some degree. And when they work, they're great. When they don't, they are not. They are not. I'm just going to kind of make room in my hand so I can create more stuff if I need it to. There's a trap. Stun all your units and draw a card. So we put in 4 traps, I believe. 5 traps, and we've seen 2 drawn. That's great. He is at 15 cards to my 15. Let's see if we can keep that going. I've got a Hurtado Bronzy in here somewhere, and he's really kind of the legendary that makes traps work, if anything. If anything, Bronzy's the one who makes it work. Get that in there. I'm not really banking on, doing crazy stuff. I'm just trying to show off what the traps do. We showed you the secret orders. All right, good. I'll be stunned. Buy me some time. You would think like, oh man, this must really be working. This is really, well, sometimes you get a game where your traps go off and you have the right trap for the right time. And there are games where you don't. For instance, you might be creating traps that destroy troops and you're playing an opponent who plays no troops. Or you create just the traps that draw cards and it's against an opponent who you don't want to draw cards. And it's just, or you put them in the deck from turn 1 on and 10 turns later they've drawn no traps and you basically spent 2 energy to play the trap as well as 1 energy to create the trap. Alright, so this will give us a little bit of fun time here. Let's go ahead and really up the ante. Bronzy makes a trap, and every trap you play, he copies. So you have eternal traps. You have eternal traps. And we'll go ahead and get rid of this guy. I won't buy myself some time. We'll just see how much danger with traps I can do. Now that I've got the 2 that I want, I'll switch up and create a Primarch there, and we'll see if I can outlast just purely on traps from what I'm drawing in my hand. And I've got that Ifrit squad, so I guess that's something. But Bronzy, he's not going to make it. You would have thought that the AI would normally attack, but if it's a smart player, they'd probably want to get rid of Bronzy too. 10 plus traps, not a good idea. I believe there was a player in some event. It was when the Alpha Legion first debuted, and they were playing the Storm, the Iron Hands, and they played the Storm, and they were playing an Alpha Legion opponent who had Bronzy and traps, and basically made everything that they played free. So they just kept playing traps for free, and he created a trap, and it would play a trap. And I think, I'm not entirely positive there, but I think it was like 300 cards left at the deck before the game finally just kerfuffled. I forget the player, but it's on, I think somebody pinned it on the Discord at one point. And they'll say, look, you're like, oh, you won the game via trap. I did. There's 8 cards to my 12. Somehow, because it's Horus, he probably drew a lot more cards than me, and that ups the odds of that. That's not going to happen every game. As much as this is a victory, I want it to be a cautionary victory. That's traps. And we did a few secret orders, and you saw how secret orders worked. With an AI, it's a little bit more predictable because you know what the AI is going to do. When it's a real opponent, you don't, number 1. Number 2, it's harder to make those secret orders stick because, like I said, you only get 2. If you're playing with Peck, you can create an unlimited amount of random ones, but you don't know what you're getting. So it's just kind of hard to make that work. It's nice when it does, but it doesn't have the same level of expertise and as a player control to set up the board right to get your lockdown going. There was a time that was very enjoyable to me when you would get a Peck who could get those orders out, the right number of orders on the right troop. which if your opponent was smart, they wouldn't put a troop out that you could put orders on. So there was another level of play there. But if you could get it going, you could have a troop that was forever stuck on the board, that unless your opponent could play Melgator, that wasn't going anywhere. It was stuck on the board, and it would kill or almost kill anything that your opponent put down, because it would have 1 to 2 of the orders that deal 3 damage. I mean, that's 6 damage anytime he drops something. You would play no troops or anything that he could kill himself upon or switch with the alpha order, and he couldn't attack you directly, and that's just, you get that with 1, and then you hit that with another, which that takes time, and then you hit that with another, and this is a long course of game, and over the course of that, any direct damage that you're taking, or any sort of troops that he is able to squeeze through, vehicles, demons, structures, could all not be targets of secret orders. So if you can get those through, then that makes things difficult. Or cards with abilities where he doesn't have to attack, he can just use an ability to deal damage. So all the time you're taking that damage, but you're trying to build a board lock state where eventually he has 6 spaces on his board that he can't do anything with, or he has 1 or 2 troops on his board and he cannot get anything else down on the table. And you're hitting him with chip damage throughout the entire course of that game, and it's a very long and arduous process, but the reward was enjoyable. And you might consider that a negative play experience if you're on the other side the first time or two that happens to you. However, as a player, there's that level of skill that you need to learn from. In my opinion, if that happens to me, I would get frustrated, and you have to figure out, why does it work? Why does that work? How does it work? It doesn't work very easily. It works very difficultly, and it requires me to play my cards in a certain way or counteract cards with stealth, vehicles, demons, things that he can't target. I've got a better chance at beating him to the punch because his is a long game, and there are a lot of decks out there that play the quick game. That is the big de facto win right now. Garrow is a perfect example of that. But with the changes that they've made, and there are quite a few changes to the way that those secret orders work, it really dumps on the entire concept of building decks around that theme or that notion. If anything, they're just a disruptive, once a turn thing, and everything that you saw those secret orders do, aside from alpha order, which is like switching the troops, but I mean, in terms of dealing damage, killing a troop, having a troop damage your opponent's warlord, for the same or a little bit more damage, you can just play a neutral tactic that does the exact same thing and requires no degree of randomness or your opponent outthinking or second guessing himself and how he plays that. So again, that limits the effective secret orders. Traps, as I mentioned, I mean, we saw it there, it worked. Hey, that's great. He had low cards, he was playing a lot of draw cards because it's a bot and it's Horus, and Sons of Horus draw cards. But there are those games, and if you try to play traps, you will come across those games where you dump a bunch of traps out there and you don't see a single one hit the table all game, and that can be frustrating, and that's not an enjoyable experience you should be seeking out. So take these with caution. How do you play around them? Let's talk about that, because I always try to make sure, like, how do you play with them? How do you play around them? Well, I'm cautioning you to try not to play with them. And that's not because I dislike them or I don't want them to work. I do want them to work. I do dislike them right now, but I want them to work. And as I said, maybe in some time period, this video, I can do like a revisited version. But what you do is, if your opponent is inserting a bunch of traps into your deck, their strategy is twofold. Number one, what the trap does. Number two, to make you draw cards, because ultimately the Alpha Legion's general theme is making you draw cards to get you to the point where they can use the heroine. Build your hand up. Your hand gets up to max, and any cards that you're drawing, you're losing, but you're still drawing cards. They can harrow you, and if you're low late game and they hit you with several Seeds of Betrayal, you might actually draw up draw your deck up, and then you start taking damage from the overdraw. That's a very real possibility. If your opponent looks like they're banking on a trap build, meaning they stay in Alpha Legionary for 3 turns, maybe even, you don't see it this often, but if they stay in Legionary for 2 to 3 turns, odds are that they've got that strategy. So play fast, play quick, try to avoid drawing cards if you can. That's all there is to it, and hope that the luck is on your side and not the opponent's side, because it is a very luck-based thing. They will try to make you draw. They'll be playing cards to make you draw. So if you are not contributing to that, you stand a better chance of beating them to the punch, because they put their eggs into that basket specifically, as opposed to other things on the table. And that is a long-term payoff. It's not an immediate payoff, which means that you've got the opportunity to take advantage of that immediate payoff. Now, with secret orders, you really just have to know what the secret orders are. I would encourage you to take a look at the collection of Alpha Legion. So you go into Alpha Legion, and then you just switch to all cards if you don't have all the Alpha Legion cards, and you browse the orders, and you look at specifically what they do. There's 4 of them. One just does damage when you play a troop on that troop that you play. That's the down here, the Omega Order. 2 attacks. Your troop will attack your warlord. That's a trap. 3, at the end of the turn, you'll be stunned. You'll take damage from that troop. And then number 4, that swaps your troop with the troop that you're attacking if you're attacking a troop. Usually what I do, if there's a secret order placed onto me, I do a little test. If I have a card in my hand that I'm willing to test. If I've got a troop, doesn't matter if it's a Goldstone, if it's a 4 health, higher up health, a little throwaway guy, sometimes maybe even a Melgator, I'll play that troop. Now, if that troop doesn't get Omega ordered, I know that Omega order's out. And I have to take a look at his table. Does he have troops on the table? If he doesn't have troops on the table, then odds are he put that Gamma order on, thinking that, okay, that'll stop him from attacking my warlord with whatever troop that I played that Gamma order on. I'm not going to attack his warlord. I'll wait. That could be a bluff, and I have to kind of gauge that depending on what I've seen. And if that's the case, I'll hold off until there's other troops on the table. If there are troops on the table, then maybe it's not Gamma order. Either which way, I would prefer to attack troops as opposed to his warlord, just to take the risk. If it's Alpha Order and we switch, we switch. I try to aim for the best value and or the one that's going to get rid of that troop, because that troop becomes a target for more secret orders. In the event that there's no troops out there for me to attack, I wait till the end of my turn. And if I am stunned at the end of my turn, I know it was a Delta Order. And now that Delta Order goes away, so that's not going to be a perpetual thing. I won't have to deal with that next turn unless he is able to put another Delta Order on my troop. And that triggers it, and it's gone. Now, if Delta Order didn't trigger and Omega Order didn't trigger, then I know it has to be one of those 2, Alpha and Gamma. And that's really just going to kind of come down to what he puts on the table the next turn and the next turn. Occasionally, whether you're playing as Alfarius or if you have Jubok, Jubok Starseer. Is it Starseer? What is the guy? What's his last name? I just call him Jubok, but I don't know. Starsight. Jubok Starsight. Occasionally, you'll have a little bit of insight on your opponent's deck, and the fact that you will copy a card, or you'll copy a card that they draw. And if it happens to be a secret order, then you know that if they play a secret order, you know exactly what secret order they've got, because it's very difficult. A player can probably do 2 different secret orders in their deck. I think the deck that I did there had a couple just to kind of show them off. Let's see here. I had 2 Gamma orders, but I didn't have a different. I just had a Seed of Betrayal and I had 2 Gamma orders. So if you've got, if you draw that, odds are high that that's the only order that they run. the odds of them having another one is not likely. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's probably not what they're banking on, because they're using that one order set to kind of cover a certain area of play for them. So there you can play around with that as well. Another thing, if it's really late game, or it's clutch, obviously you can Melgator your troop that has a secret order on it, return it back to your hand. Or, and again, as I said, like it just depends on how clutch it is. You can play sabotage. You can jam your troop. They'll lose whatever they've got from you, as well as that secret order, and then you can use them without having to worry about that secret order doing anything. But it's really just going to kind of depend on what it is. Is it going to win you the game? Is it just going to be disruption? I don't know. Do you need to get rid of cards in your hand? It's a one-cost card, and you can play a couple others. And maybe that might not be a bad decision. Just things to kind of keep in mind. But that's the best ways to play around them. They're not very limited, but at the same time, your opponent is banking on a luck strategy as well as maybe a gambling strategy, a little bit of bluffing. Are you or aren't you not going to walk into his trap with the Delta orders or the Gamma orders? Are you or are you not going to be drawing those traps for him to revel in the payoff? And if you don't, he'll be very sad. And you will have done nothing to make him sad except play your game as you would have normally. So that is it. That is secret orders. That is traps. A cautionary tale, if you will. I hope that at some point they are revised and updated, and we can go back and revisit and see how they've been changed and how they're actually somewhat playable. Because I don't think that they are right now at this point, and I think that's unfortunate, because it's not like these cards exist outside of the pool to be created, like certain Chaos cards or the Mechandrites. They exist within the card pool of the Alpha Legion, and that's 8 card slots that they're taking up, and those could be other cards, or those could be better effects, or those could be better executed, and I think at some point we'll see that. So anyways, that's it. That's what I've got for me for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. If this is helpful, if it's inspired you to play traps and secret orders, good luck. If anything, I hope it's inspired you to be a little bit more cautious in terms of just diving into them. Know what to expect when you're facing them. Know what to expect if you plan on playing with them, because it will be a frustrating process. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it will not always be a fun experience. That's it. And as I said, I think for now we are approaching May, so we've got another 2 weeks probably before the first faction of the new set launches, and then we'll take a look at what their mechanics have to offer. I may not do a recruit level video on whatever new tactics that those mechanics that Legion holds, because I really want to digest things for time, but eventually we will get to that point. But yeah, I think that kind of covers all the legions, all the different various mechanics that have not been discussed. If there's anything that you think that I haven't talked about, that you don't know anything about, there's not any videos in the recruit stuff, please let me know, and I'll get to it. But I think I've kind of tagged on all that. So then I think really at this point we've got a 2-week waiting game for the Burning of Prospero Burns expansion, and there are probably going to be some game changes that I'll have some comments on. I've got some other comments and thought processes on a few other discussions and trends within the game, but it's hard to have a discussion with just myself. I'm just throwing out ideas there, and I'd rather do that over either deck discussion or demonstrations or something like that. Just kind of spit some ideas and concepts out there, and at the same time, some of that stuff is very temporary. I could tell you my opinion about something today, and in 2 weeks' time, is it relevant or not? If they change things, I don't know, maybe, and I'm just talking to myself, so we'll see. But that's it for me. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're playing Legions, please keep playing Legions. We'll see you then next time. All right, bye. Hey, hey.